Let me see if you can see me. It should be okay now. There we go. Okay, well, that's what happens when things are live. Sometimes things don't work out the way they should. Okay, so how is everybody? Okay, wow. I hope you can see me now. Should be okay. So, hey, that's the thing about live streams. It works sometimes and sometimes it doesn't work. Okay, so if you're here, we're going to spend the next half an hour. I know we're starting a little bit late, but we're going to talk about how to greet people. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about an exam called IELTS, a little bit about speaking part 1, about what you can do there. Okay, so it'll be useful in a general English way, and it'll also be useful if you want to take the IELTS exam. Okay, so if you're in the chat, please let me know. If you have any questions at any time, you can ask. I'm more than happy to answer your questions. Okay, so first, let's talk about greetings. So typically, when you want to talk to people, the very and most basic way of doing that is to say something like, hello. And that's perfectly fine. However, if you want to have different ways of doing that, you're going to have to up your game. I'm going to give you an idiom here. Up your game. Up your game means you need to improve yourself. You'll notice that native English speakers rarely use hello. They like to use lots of other phrases. So instead, you might want to use something else instead of hello. And hello is perfectly fine. But like I said, there are other ways that you can do that. Okay, so if you go to England, a lot of people that are British like to say, how do you do? Now this phrase is a little bit strange because you might think it means, how are you doing? It doesn't mean that at all. It just means hello. So when someone says, how do you do? You don't say, oh, I'm doing fine. That's actually the wrong response. If someone asks you, how do you do? You should say, how do you do? So it's very, very similar to just hello. Now, if there are other ways to greet people, then please let me know in the chat. But I'm going to give you some other ways that you can greet people. So you can also say things like, how's it going? How's it going is quite popular. I like to use this one. There are other ways that you can say hello. You can say, how are you? So this is probably the most, or the second most basic, or maybe hello and how are you are equally simple. You can say, how are things? So this is something else that you can do. So you can say all of these things. There's many more. If you know any others, please let me know in the chat room. I haven't heard anything. I see that we have, who do we have here? We have Kylie, and I cannot read that. I know that's Tina, but I cannot read that long something, dragon something. I cannot read that word. Okay, so there are actually even more ways other than this. You can also ask, what's new? So if you haven't seen a person for a while, you can say, what's new? You can say, how have you been? How have you been? You can ask, anything new? Anything new? It's good to see you. It's good to see you. So in reality, there are a million ways. I shouldn't say a million, but as you can see, there's more than just the very basic hello and how are you. There are many other ways of saluting or greeting people. I mean, you could even say greetings, but this is a very old way of greeting people. You could still do that if you'd like, but nowadays we don't do that very much. But you can see here we have like 10 ways of doing it. So you don't have to say just hello, right? Now, after this, so imagine someone comes up to you and they say, anything new, or it's good to see you. How do you reply? So if you're here in the chat, can you give me some ways that you would reply to someone greeting you? And then I'm going to go over a few others. So right now in the chat, can you type some other ways or how you would respond to someone saying this to you? What are the most common ways of replying? So I'm going to erase the board and then see what you have to come or what you come up with. So someone says, how are things? How do you respond? How's it going? How do you respond? So tell me in the chat. Okay, currently no responses. No, okay, fine. Anyways, so if someone says, hi, how are you? How do you usually reply? Well, the most basic way is just saying fine. That's the simplest and probably most common way, but you may want to use something else. This is very low level, and it's really boring. I mean, even if it's, you think about it from a you think of it from a native English speaker point of view, you have to be able to do more than just to say fine. Some other people just say good. Right? How are you? Good. What's new? I'm good. That's okay, right? But you may want to use something else. So if you want to up your game or to be slightly better, you might say I'm great. I'm doing well. But beyond that, you can also say things like fantastic. So fantastic just means really good. And there are lots of words that mean really good. You can say amazing. You can say superb. You can say incredible. You can say marvelous. So you can use a lot of these words, not only for replying to the question of how you are, but you can also use these words to describe anything that's quite good. So if someone asks you, well, how was that movie or how was that book? You can say, well, it was fantastic, it was amazing, it was superb, it was incredible, it was marvelous. There are a lot of these words. I won't write them all down, but there are other ways that you can do that, obviously. You can say things like, I'm feeling dandy. Dandy is a great word. I'm feeling dandy. It just means you're feeling well. So you'll notice when people ask you how you are, if you say you're fine or good, yeah, that's really basic, and you can do that. However, you may want to spice up your language, so you can use something like this instead. Okay, so I think that's pretty simple. I don't think that's really that difficult. If you have any questions, please ask. Let me know. But yeah, lots of ways that you can answer. Now, that's if you're doing good. I think that most people, 99% of the time, would answer this way. Obviously, if you're feeling a little bit worse, you don't feel that good, you don't like something, then obviously you can answer in some other way, right? You can say, oh, I've just been really busy at work. I haven't had much time. I'm really tired. I just played, basketball for 4 hours. So there are lots of other ways that you can answer, but for the 99% of the time where you just want to give a very basic answer, use this instead of fine or good. Okay, great. Well, if no questions, then we're going to move on to the next part. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the IELTS exam. So what is, or if you're here, you probably know what the IELTS exam is. So in the IELTS exam, there are 4 parts. You have your listening, you have your reading, you have your writing, and your speaking. For the speaking part, it's always one-on-one, and actually there's 3 different components. So when you're talking to the examiner for the first part of the IELTS exam, you do have to understand that actually there are a lot of things going on here. So even before, I want to make this clear, even before you get to the exam, you have to be prepared. And even before part 1, they expect you to use English. So even before you get to the formal assessment part of part 1, you have to use English beforehand. But today we're going to be focusing on part 1. In part 1, they like to ask you very simple questions about you or people in your country or your city. Now, these sorts of questions do happen in lots of different English exams. And they do happen in job interviews, right? In job interviews, they always ask you, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What's your education like? So these are very common and basic questions that you will almost always encounter no matter what situation you're in. So having some different ways of answering and replying is definitely going to be quite key. That is just, something that is expected and you must be able to do. So let's take a look at some possible speaking part 1 type questions. Today wasn't that hot, but it's still unbelievably humid here. But that's the way life goes sometimes. Okay. Very good. Okay, so. Okay, let's take a look at some of these questions. So it says here, yeah, hi Tina. So it says here, what today, yes, Jane. Today, trying this thing out. Today is the first class. So I don't know if you can see the question. It should be popping up. Is it not popping up? Yes, it's popping up. Okay, so these are some speaking part 1 questions. As an example, it says, what do you enjoy doing in your free time? So a very basic question. What do you enjoy doing in your free time? So whenever you get any question, one of the key things that you want to do is you want to paraphrase. So this is very important. Paraphrasing means you use your own words to say the same thing. Okay? So I want to make sure that you're clear about this. If you look at that first question, it says, what do you enjoy doing in your free time? You cannot say something like, I enjoy swimming in my free time. That's a very bad answer. Even during a job interview, it's quite similar. So in a job interview, you want to impress the interviewer. Same thing in the IELTS exam, or in any exam. You want to show the person just how smart and articulate you are. If you use all the same words that are already provided to you, then obviously you're probably not a very good speaker. You may be a poor communicator. You might not be able to think very well. And so you want to be able to say things in such a way that demonstrates just how good your language is. Okay? So instead of saying, I enjoy swimming in my free time, you might say, I really relish playing basketball whenever I get a chance. So you'll notice just how much better that answer is. Instead of saying, what do you enjoy? We can use the word relish. There are lots of other words instead of relish that you could use. You could use like, I'm keen on, I'm really into, okay? You have playing basketball. And in my free time, instead it's whenever I get a chance. Light more brightly, sir. it should be quite bright. Let me know. Let me know if it's not that bright. It should be okay, but yeah, I will keep an eye on it. So let me know, Hannah. Yeah, so you'll notice here, when you're talking to somebody else, you can make your language better. Don't copy it. Here's another example. How much time do you have for each week for doing these things? Well, if you're a low-level student, you might say, well, each week I have about 3 hours to do this. The answer's okay, but once again, you want to show you have better language. So when it says, how much time do you have? You can answer it in this way. Usually, I like doing these activities when I have a chance, but it might only be about 2 hours a week. So you'll notice here, instead of directly answering the question and saying, oh, 2 weeks or 2 hours per week is how much time I have, instead you can put that at the end of the sentence and put some other details in front. So here's another way that you can answer. Thank you, Tina. Yes, I hope the lighting is okay. So you'll notice here, doing these things, instead you can always paraphrase, activities, when I have a chance, about 2 hours a week. And at the front, I put the adverbial word, adverbial clause, usually. So you can also use this when you're talking in English. Other ly words, right? You might say typically, or normally, or commonly, right? Lots of these words all mean usually, so you can do that. Okay. So you notice one of the key things that you should be doing is paraphrasing. Okay. So definitely you should do that. Now, the other thing that you should always do, it doesn't matter if it's an exam or some other situation, is you should try to give more details. So if you look here, what do you enjoy doing in your free time? So here we have, I really relish playing basketball whenever I get a chance. You notice that answer is quite short. So if you're trying to impress somebody, either be an interviewer, I don't know, maybe you're trying to impress a girl or an examiner, it might be a good idea that you give specific details. So when you want to think of specific details, you should always think about the 5 W questions, like who, what, where, when, why, and sometimes how. If you can think about these things, then you can make your answer longer and you can elaborate to a much deeper level. So for example, I really relish playing basketball whenever I get a chance. And if you say with who, you might be like, whenever I get a chance, and generally I will play with my brother John, and we go to the park near our house almost every day after school. So this is a lot longer and it's more specific. So I will play with my brother John, so that's who. Go to the park near our house, that's where. And when, almost every day after school. So these are the things that you can do to try to make your answers longer. And this is always true for both your writing and your speaking. I remember giving a lot of job interviews, and quite a few people give extremely short responses. So you ask them, oh, what do you like? And say, I like math. And they just stop there. And sometimes I'll wait 2 or 3 seconds. And then I'll be like, oh, okay, well, why do you like math? And then they'll give me a reason why. And then I'll ask them a follow-up question, and they'll give another short response, right? How long have you been in your job for? Oh, I've been in my job for 5 years. And then they stop. So one of the most annoying things that you could do to people is to give very short answers. Yes, Tina, you're right. You can use regularly. That's a very good word. So that's why you want to ask yourself these sorts of questions, and then you can give longer responses. So that's definitely something that you should try doing. I would totally recommend that. So these are two of the main skills that you should use, especially when you're doing speaking part one, or even in your daily life. Try to be more exciting. Try to give more specific details. Try to paraphrase. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so that's speaking part one. Any questions so far? Hi. Questions? No questions? Everything's going well? Okay. So let me write up a question up on the board that we just had. And I want you to type in the chat how you would answer a question like this. How has the way people spend time changed over the years? So, how would you answer this question? Now, remember, the two things that we just talked about have to do with paraphrasing and using and using some examples. You can ask yourself the 5W questions: who, what, where, when, and why. Sometimes how. And then in addition to that, you can paraphrase. You use your own language. So how can we do that? So can you give me an example? I'm going to give you an example for me, but can you give an example yourself? So I'll give you a few seconds for that. It's a little bit more difficult than you might think. Especially as a non-native English speaker, it may take some time for you to gather your thoughts, to go, well, how can I change this word? How can I say this in another way? But that's what the examiners want, and that's what you should try to do. So I'll give you a few more moments. Let's see if any of you are able to do that. Okay, so I'm going to give you an idea about what you can say. So if we look at the word way, there are lots of words that you can use instead of way. No questions. Thank you. Okay. Another word for way is channel. So you know you have a TV channel? Sorry, it's a little bit tiny. I should write it. Channel, right? So channel is another word for way. So you can say the channel. And instead of people, a very good word for people that you can always use is individuals. This is a great word, individuals. The channel, the individuals use time. Instead of spend, we can use. Has been altered. So notice we were able to change a lot of these words. So instead of way, we used channel, individuals instead of people. We used use instead of spend. Instead of changed, we have altered. Now, definitely one of the things that you should try doing is if you have the word change, you can use the word alter instead. Now, the word change is used a lot as you don't have to worry whether or not it's active or passive voice usually. But here it should be passive voice, so the grammar is a little bit difficult. The channel individuals use time has been altered. And then we can talk about some specific examples. So how has it been altered? Well, obviously, as one prime example would be what you're doing right now. You are watching this YouTube stream, right? This was not even possible 10 years ago. Just to give you an idea how far technology has come. Even 10 years ago, this was not possible. Even like 5 or 6 years ago, it was very rare for people to stream, like individuals. You had companies streaming a little bit, but individuals is quite odd. Now, almost anybody can stream as long as they have a decent internet connection. So let's use that as an example, right? An example of what? The channel individuals use time has been altered such as their ability to stream live content. Now, we might even be more specific, right? We might say, well, where? Well, I mean, you can stream live content basically anywhere they have an internet connection. Okay? So you just keep adding these sorts of questions, you keep answering them, and it'll be fine. Real chatting changed a virtual way. People spend time by different electronic devices. Real chat. Yes, the grammar's a little bit off. However, you do get the point where you do need to paraphrase. Right. Okay, that's what you need to do. So I can understand the paraphrase, and you did give specific examples. So this example here, people spend their time by different electronic devices. That's answering what, right? And then you could talk about which devices. Now, you have to be careful here for the, don't have too many lists. Lists can be quite bad. So lots of people like to talk for a very long time. Like, I like fruit, like apples, bananas, lemons, tomatoes, and they just keep talking. Like, be very careful. You can have a few lists. You can't have too many. So, for example, for this one, if you say electronic devices, and you say, like, their Samsung, their Apple, their HTC, their Huawei, their Xiaomi, that's a bad idea for the IELTS exam. And you have to think about it. Even if you're just talking to a friend, do your friends really want to hear you just blabber on and on and on, you know, giving a list of 20 different things? Probably not. I'll teach you a good word. Blabber. Blabber just means you keep talking about something. Usually, you're not paying attention to it. That's what blabber means. Okay, so you notice the two key things that you should be doing: paraphrasing and answering the 5W questions, and sometimes how. Okay, any concerns about speaking part 1 or greetings? Okay, well, it's almost half an hour, so that's all we're going to cover tonight. Now, this is the first time that we've done this, so please let me know how you think it went. Please let me know what kind of topics you want covered next time. So we'll probably do it again, or we will do it again next Monday night. So if you can send me a message, you can send me a message to those numbers down there, or you can send me a message another way. Please let me know what kinds of topics you want covered. You can also follow my Instagram. I post there every single day. So if you're not following already, you can follow there. Pretty good vocabulary and tips. I'll just write down my Instagram if you're not already following. So it's just at Walter English 1. So give me a follow there. But yeah, if you have any concerns or questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Please let me know what you would like me to cover next week. If nothing else, then I guess I'll see you next week. Same time. Except next week, it'll actually start at 9. I think I figured out what the problem was with the technical issue. So next week, Monday from 9 to 9:30, we'll have another class. You can vote on the topic. Let me know what you'd like covered, and we'll go from there. Okay, it was good to see you all. See you next week. Bye.